I have never seen a man with such inner strength. Because he didn't know what the point of living was. He simply checked himself into a mental institution. The moment he arrived, an old man popped out and asked him,
"How many fingers do you see?"
You crazy Stop sneaking up on me like that.
"How many?"
4.
4? Another idiot.
Hunter thought the old man was rambling nonsense, but an orderly told him Arthur was a remarkable man with savant syndrome, who also owned a billion-dollar clothing design company worth billions. But to continuously mine the creative ideas in his mind, he had pushed himself into madness, and now he spent his days here asking people how many fingers they had. This instantly sparked Hunter's deep curiosity, so that night he found Arthur wanting to know the answer to the question. Yet Arthur was completely absorbed in his own world, doing math problems, ignoring Hunter's inquiries entirely. It wasn't until Hunter accidentally noticed the paper cup on the table leaking that he casually tore off a nearby label and stuck it on. It was this small gesture that made Arthur, long isolated here, feel an unfamiliar warmth. So he grabbed Hunter's hand and asked again. Arthur told him, "If you focus only on the surface of the problem, you'll never see another possible answer. You should try looking further afield."
8. 8. 8. Yes. 8's a good answer. See what no one else sees. See what everyone else chooses not to see. Out of fear, conformity, laziness. See the whole world anew each day.
Then Arthur said to Hunter that, in fact, he had already comprehended these truths, otherwise he wouldn't have come here today. Hunter, hearing this, asked in return, "Then what do you see in me?" Arthur didn't answer directly, instead saying meaningfully, "Thank you, Patch, for fixing my cup."
I'll see you around. Patch.
Hunter was instantly confused. He didn't think his name was Patch. When it was time to sleep that night, his roommate Rudy sat on his bed rocking back and forth. The creaking noise kept Hunter awake, so he had to ask Rudy what was wrong. It turned out Rudy suffered from a phobia of squirrels. He believed that the moment he got off the bed, countless squirrels lurking underneath would bite at him, so he dared not go to use the bathroom. At first, Hunter, like any ordinary doctor, tried to reason with Rudy rationally, explaining that squirrels are among the gentlest creatures on Earth, easily scared away with a single step. Yet no matter how much he tried to persuade him, Rudy remained deaf to it. Just as Hunter was at a loss, Arthur's words suddenly surfaced in his mind. Look at the problem from a different angle. See it from the other person's perspective. So he tried entering Rudy's viewpoint, imagining himself in a perilous battlefield. He then shaped his hand like a gun and shot the squirrel commander, hiding in the corner. A staff member patrolling outside saw this and was utterly speechless. He could only let the two madmen carry on wildly in the room. Only after the imagined squirrels were all eliminated did Rudy finally relax and rush to the toilet. Listening to the sound of running water inside, this man suffering from severe depression finally found meaning in life and a direction for his future. He also understood why Arthur called him Patch, because another meaning of Patch is a repair piece. Perhaps he was someone with the potential to mend, able to fill the voids in others' hearts. This is absolutely one of the greatest medical films in cinematic history, because it profoundly criticizes the coldness of the traditional medical model that sees the disease, not the person, and emphasizes the importance of genuine communication between doctors and patients. And this is a true story. After leaving the mental institution, Hunter Adams officially changed his name to Patch Adams. He studied hard for 2 years and got into the most prestigious local medical school, the Virginia Commonwealth University School of Medicine. However, the moment he stepped into the dorm, his age drew skepticism and veiled mockery from his roommate Mitch. And the campus itself seemed permeated with an air of coldness. At the opening ceremony, Dean Walcott bluntly warned everyone, "Human nature is unreliable. As doctors, only by remaining detached and superior can we demonstrate our professionalism and authority, and patients will trust our medical skills." After Walcott finished, the audience burst into applause, but Patch felt deeply uncomfortable, not only because he disagreed with Walcott, but more importantly, his attention was completely captured by a beautiful young woman behind him. So once the ceremony ended, he immediately chased after the girl, chattering incessantly to strike up a conversation. But Karen found this older man quite annoying. After saying that, Karen turned and left, and this awkward moment was witnessed by Truman nearby. Just like that, they instantly became acquainted and went together to the school cafeteria. During the meal, Patch couldn't help but voice his doubts to Truman about Dean Walcott's speech. He felt doctors shouldn't be cold diagnostic machines, but should build positive interactions with patients, offering hope alongside treatment and advice. After all, a healer must not only treat the illness, but more importantly, attend to the patient's mind. To prove his point, Patch decided to take Truman on a street experiment. He attracted people's attention with unexpected actions while Truman recorded their reactions nearby. But Truman felt this was utterly pointless. Patch, however, said,
Wait for it.
Oh, you monster.
Clearly, people enjoyed these fun and silly antics. But street experiments weren't enough. Next, they disguised themselves as third-year residents and sneaked into the hospital. When the instructor clinically described a diabetic patient's condition using cold medical jargon, all the students were busy taking notes or asking the instructor about treatments. No one noticed the patient's own nervous, fearful expression nearby, until Patch abruptly interjected.
I was just wondering the patient's name.
Marjorie.
Hi, Marjorie.
Just a simple greeting, yet it felt like a warm current, instantly melting the frost of tension in the patient's heart. Midway, Truman, worried they'd be caught, made an excuse and left first. Patch continued wandering the hospital looking for another experiment subject when he unexpectedly ran into Dean Walcott. In a panic, he ducked into a nearby ward. When he turned around, the sight before him shocked him. The room was filled with children suffering from leukemia. Their faces lacked any of the vitality their age should have. The entire room was shadowed by death. Patch's heart ached deeply. He gently walked over to a little girl's bed. He didn't ask anything about her condition, but kindly exchanged names with her. Then he picked up a nearby red rubber nose and put it on, becoming a clown. His exaggerated, comical performance made the girl laugh heartily. Hearing the commotion, the other children all looked at Patch, instantly igniting a joyful atmosphere throughout the room. Patch even placed a bedpan on his head, imitating a pirate sailing the high seas. In an instant, pure smiles blossomed on every young face. The previously lifeless ward transformed, as if becoming a playground for the children. It wasn't until a nurse arrived that this joyful, absurd therapy session ended. Just as Patch turned away with a satisfied smile, he unluckily ran into Walcott yet again. Fortunately, since it was Patch's first offense and other faculty spoke highly of him, Walcott merely issued a warning. Walcott's threat was unmistakable in his words. Yet Patch was never one to follow the rules by nature. Later, he organized a study group, and Karen joined them at Mitch's invitation. Seeing Karen constantly worried about her studies, Patch curiously asked why she chose to become a doctor. Karen stated her top priority was studying, not discussing irrelevant matters. Hearing this only made Patch more enthusiastic, and he asked the group instead, "Why do doctors always refer to patients by their disease? Why can't we build connections with them? Will doctors explode if they do?" Karen immediately regretted joining them upon hearing this. Patch quickly chased after her to explain, "I just wanted to tell you studying medicine shouldn't be confined to textbooks. We learn more from the patients themselves." But Karen countered, "Have you noticed only 8 women among the 163 students in our class? I worked extremely hard to get here, and I must work even harder to stay, so I won't waste time on your good doctor theory." With that, Karen rode off on her bicycle. Yet her independent and earnest spirit only drew Patch in more, so he began passionately pursuing Karen, which further fueled Mitch's dislike for Patch. Karen remained cold as ice. Meanwhile, Patch never forgot the children needing care, often visiting the hospital in wild costumes. Even the sternest nurses couldn't help but laugh at Patch, let alone the innocent children. They adored this quirky, humorous doctor immensely. With Patch around, they seemed to forget their pain, experiencing only joy. The nurses' work also became lighter and more enjoyable. When final grades came out, no one expected the usually carefree Patch to rank second, while the diligent Karen was at the bottom of the class. This deeply wounded Karen's pride, and she grew curious how such an oddball studied. This time, Patch didn't give a long explanation. He simply pulled out a red rubber nose.
Kids.
Oh no, not just kids, anybody. Patients are opening up to me, Corinne. They're sharing their dreams, their fantasies, and if you hit on the right topic, they brighten up for one brief moment. They don't concentrate on the pain. They don't even feel the pain.
Karen clearly didn't quite believe him, so Patch had her put the nose on. then held up a mirror. At first, Karen tried to suppress her smile, but soon her own ridiculous appearance made her burst out laughing. From that moment, she started to somewhat believe Patch's seemingly absurd theories. That night, Patch led them secretly into the hospital, placing an air gun in the hand of a critically ill elderly man. When the man awoke, they tossed various animal balloons into the air, staging an impromptu African safari hunt for him. The popping balloons sounded like fireworks, decorating the ward like a dazzling fairy tale world, bringing joy to the other elderly patients too. A nurse on duty heard the noise and wanted to investigate, but the head nurse stopped her. She had already come to accept Patch's unique laughter therapy. As the popping sounds faded, a contented smile spread across the old man's face. He sincerely thanked Patch and the others, saying going on an African safari was his lifelong dream. Though achieved in this unusual way, it left him satisfied and without regrets. Noticing an elderly woman nearby, Patch asked her about her wish. She said as a child, her mother always had her reach into the pot to pinch the soft noodles while cooking, so she'd always dreamed of swimming in a pool full of noodles. Seeing the sparkle in the old woman's eyes as she spoke, Karen finally understood Patch's actions were never just attention-seeking stunts. He ignited patients' hope for life with love and joy, while gaining deeper insight into their conditions. This was perhaps the secret to Patch's high scores. On the way back, Patch confessed his feelings to Karen again. This time, Karen still didn't agree, but she didn't refuse outright either. Instead, she smiled warmly and wished him good night. For she had now fully experienced Patch's magic. Yet even for Patch, there was one patient at the hospital who gave him a headache. The patient in room 305, Bill, had an extremely volatile temper. Nurses trembled with fear during dressing changes, afraid to enter his room. Patch tried singing to soften Bill, but Bill thought Patch was mocking his inability to get up and furiously threw him out. Seeing Patch humbled, the nurses couldn't help but laugh. Finally, someone he couldn't win over. But Patch was not someone who would give up easily. In the following days, he continued spreading joy in other wards, practicing his medical philosophy. Sadly, misfortune struck, and Walcott caught him red-handed once more. Despite Patch quoting sources and arguing logically, Walcott harshly reprimanded him. He warned Patch, "If you want to be a clown, join the circus. Patients here don't need humor. They need doctors who can prescribe medicine and treat illnesses." And he strictly forbade Patch from visiting patients before his third-year internship, or he'd be expelled. Furthermore, Walcott questioned Patch's exam results, citing reports of cheating. Patch instantly knew his roommate was behind it. Rage surged through him, and he stormed back to the dorm, demanding why Mitch would falsely accuse him without proof. It turned out Mitch came from a prestigious medical family, burdened with high expectations since childhood, even winning the notable Thompson Science Achievement Award. To become the exemplary doctor his parents envisioned, he studied day and night, researched countless medical cases, striving to save lives at critical moments. But Patch? He slacked off daily, yet still ranked second in the class. This stark contrast left Mitch deeply resentful, for it was a talent he could never reach. They parted on bad terms. Feeling helpless, Patch could only turn to Truman to pour out his distress, but unexpectedly, Truman also somewhat agreed with the dean's approach. After all, hospitals are places of pain and death. But Patch countered.
We're all dying, Truman. Our job is to increase health. You know what that means? That means improving the quality of life, not just delaying death.
Truman couldn't immediately judge who was right or wrong, and could only advise Patch to keep a lower profile in the future. But if he knew how to be low-key, he wouldn't be the one and only Patch. The very next day, he ignored Walcott's warning and went directly to Bill's bedside, dressed as an angel. He used poetry to express Bill's despair toward life. It turned out Bill suffered from a terminal illness, enduring immense pain every day, which filled him with despair and anger towards the world. But Patch's angel costume shattered the cold barrier between doctor and patient, gently opening the door to Bill's long-shut heart. Bill finally laughed heartily, able to face his remaining time with peace. However, Walcott still harbored resentment over Patch's unorthodox ways. After class one day, Walcott announced that the school would host a grand obstetrics and gynecology lecture the following Monday, gathering leading experts from across the nation. Walcott then assigned Patch the task of hosting, emphasizing that the welcome ceremony must suit the experts' status and position, ideally making them feel completely at home. Anyone could see this was Walcott deliberately setting Patch up for failure. Yet, Patch wasn't worried at all. Instead, he confidently stated he would do an excellent job. Early the next morning, when Walcott led the visiting experts towards the lecture hall, he was stunned speechless by the sight before him.
Come on in! Whoa! Come on! Come on! Come on!
Walcott was furious, his face livid. But some experts smiled knowingly because for their profession, this truly had a home away from home feeling. After the lecture, a humiliated Walcott decided to settle both old and new scores. He announced Patch's expulsion on the spot, permanently ending his chance of becoming a doctor. Patch had no choice but to plead his case with President Anderson. Fortunately, Anderson considered Patch's excellent grades and acknowledged that his laughter therapy genuinely improved doctor-patient relations, so he agreed to vouch for Patch. But to save Walcott's face, Anderson ultimately decreed that Patch was forbidden from entering the hospital except under special circumstances. Yet trouble arrived soon enough. That night, Bill was in his final moments. He asked a nurse to find Patch, requesting he sing their unfinished song one last time. But this time, Patch choked up, unable to sing the previously cheerful melody. Because who could remain unmoved watching a vibrant life fade away right before their eyes? As Patch left the room with a heavy heart, he saw a mother crying hysterically in the hallway. A recent car accident had taken her husband and son, and her daughter was fighting for her life in intensive care. Yet the hospital demanded she complete tedious paperwork before seeing her daughter, despite her overwhelming grief. This utterly inhuman process shocked Patch, so he vented about it to Truman over dinner. Unexpectedly, others nearby overheard and joined the chorus of complaints. Finally, they reached a sobering conclusion. Avoid getting sick at all costs. At that moment, a bold idea took root in Patch's mind. Since everyone complained about hospitals, why not build one truly centered on people, filled with love and care? Patch excitedly shared his vision with Karen. Karen understood Patch's idea was beautiful, but achieving it seemed impossible. After all, they were still students with no funds to support such a grand vision. However, she clearly underestimated Patch's perseverance and resolve. 2 years passed in a flash, and Patch finally gained freedom to enter the hospital as a third-year resident. Yet during rounds one day, he saw an instructor asking a patient how many fingers they had, suddenly reminding him of an old friend. So one morning, a few days later, he took Karen to a beautiful cliffside. Facing the lush forest below, he excitedly announced this was the perfect location for his ideal hospital. Then they went to a dilapidated cabin at the foot of the mountain. It turned out this was actually the property of Arthur from the mental institution, who generously lent it to Patch for free until they could afford to buy it. In the following days, Patch led a group of like-minded friends in renovating the cabin. Soon after, this hospital filled with love and hope was completed and quickly became overcrowded. Those who came were poor people unable to afford care or without homes. Here, they helped and encouraged each other, filled with warmth and friendship. The entire hospital felt like a blissful paradise. However, peaceful times never last. One day, a mentally ill patient with self-harm tendencies arrived. At first sight, Karen felt an inexplicable, ominous feeling and wanted to refuse him. But Patch told Karen, "I'm weird too. If we don't accept him here, where else can he go?" So Larry stayed, and later Patch would pay a heavy price for his blind optimism. As time passed, the feelings between Patch and Karen grew to their peak. They finally confirmed their romantic relationship that very night. By the flickering firelight, Karen opened her heart to Patch for the first time. She admitted her striking looks had attracted many men, but also led to repeated hurt. This, it turned out, was why she hesitated to accept Patch's affection, even though she had loved him for a long time. Perhaps this is love's magic. It makes you feel pain and fear, yet you willingly dive in like a moth to flame. In the days that followed, Karen was awakened each morning by a warm voice, Patch reading her romantic love letters he had written. This sweet scene was abruptly shattered when Truman burst in. Medical supplies were running low. They decided to split up. Patch and Truman disguised themselves as a doctor and a corpse to borrow supplies from the hospital, while Karen went to the supermarket for daily necessities. Upon returning, she received a message from Larry asking for help. She hesitated at first, but remembering Patch's words from the day before, she felt she should do something. Little did she know this would be their final goodbye. Karen's life ended forever in that hopeful midsummer. Early the next morning, Patch was summoned by Anderson. At first, he thought their operation the night before had been discovered, but instead heard the tragic news about Karen. In that moment, his soul seemed emptied. His eyes filled with despair and emptiness. He knew his blind optimism had killed his girlfriend. On the day of the funeral, he hid far behind a large tree. Only after the crowd dispersed did he slowly emerge, choking back tears as he read Karen the unfinished love letter. Life is like a rushing river. The left bank holds unforgettable memories, the right bank a distant future. And flowing between them is the grief and guilt he could never escape in this lifetime. This moment left his life directionless once again. He finally understood the truth behind Walcott's icy words. Human nature truly is untrustworthy. So Patch decided to disband this charity hospital immediately. Truman desperately tried to dissuade him, yet couldn't reach Patch's shattered heart.
People are good. Trust people? Ha! You know, Truman, in all of God's creations, only human beings kill their own species.
Truman was instantly rendered speechless by Patch's retort, for the world indeed isn't always as beautiful as we hope. Ultimately, Patch chose to drop out of school. He threw all the props that once brought joy into the trash, ready to return to the psychiatric hospital and spend the rest of his life in solitude. Unexpectedly, Mitch, who'd always clashed with him, blocked his path. Mitch spent 2 full years finally surpassing Patch academically. He thought he could finally hold his head high, only to realize the gap between them remained worlds apart. Because even as the top student in class, he still couldn't find a way to help an old lady who liked to eat with her hands enjoy a proper meal. But by now, Patch was completely disheartened. He walked away resolutely with empty eyes. Arriving at the cliff where he and Karen first admired the view, he roared at the sky, demanding why God was so unfair, why everything was taken from him. Only howling mountain winds answered him. In despair, Patch's gaze fell upon the bottomless chasm below. Just as he prepared to take that step, a beautiful butterfly landed on his briefcase, then gently rested on Patch's chest, as if telling him, "Your heart still holds love and warmth." Fluttering its wings, the butterfly locked eyes with Patch. Memories of the past flooded his mind. Karen once said she wished to become a carefree butterfly, flying freely between heaven and earth. Now, her wish had finally come true. Seeing this, Patch suddenly had an epiphany. He immediately went to the hospital and, with Mitch, took Mrs. Kennedy, who refused to eat. They came before a giant swimming pool. When Mrs. Kennedy saw it filled with her favorite noodles, her eyes sparkled with pure delight. Amidst the enthusiastic cheers of the crowd, Mrs. Kennedy, as if rejuvenated, blissfully immersed herself in her childhood dream. Her life was finally fulfilled. But it must be said, such extravagant waste of food was indeed somewhat improper. Therefore, Patch soon received a dismissal notice signed by Dean Walcott. He stormed into the office, argued fiercely with Walcott, then ignored the secretary's attempts to stop him, grabbing his own file to see the truth. He discovered his grades were nearly top of the class. So what was Walcott's reason for expelling him? Excessive optimism towards patients. Patch instantly realized he was being deliberately targeted. Mitch suggested he appeal to the state medical board. With his outstanding grades in the file, he might win the hearing panel's sympathy and complete his studies. Unexpectedly, at the hearing, Walcott never mentioned their past conflict, instead directly accusing Patch of operating an unlicensed clinic. This was an extremely serious charge and an undeniable fact. Suddenly, the judges began to lean toward Walcott's side and asked Patch if he had ever considered the consequences of possibly causing someone's death. Patch responded calmly and firmly, "I simply opened a mutual help farm. Those who come are indeed patients, but they are also each other's doctors. Everyone willingly takes responsibility for caring for others. And what's wrong with death? Death is an inevitable part of life's long river, the final destination for everyone, and another form of beginning. Accepting death allows us to live better in the present." Then he turned to all medical students and admonished, "Many miracles in medicine often stem not from advanced skills or wonder drugs, but from an optimistic mindset and positive emotions. So from now on, humble yourselves. Diligently practice your communication skills. Connect with patients sincerely, rather than obsess over paper achievements. Also, build strong friendships with the great nurses behind you, for they navigate daily between blood and urine. Their experience and wisdom are invaluable treasures no classroom can teach." Patch then turned his gaze to the judges, stating that no matter how they ruled, his determination to become the best doctor in the world remained. Patch's words plunged the hearing panel into collective silence.
Now, you have the ability to prevent me from graduating. You can keep me from getting the title and the white coat. But you can't control my spirit, gentlemen. You can't keep me from learning. You can't keep me from studying. So you have a choice. You could have me as a professional colleague, passionate, or you can have me as an outspoken outsider, still adamant. Either way, I'll probably still be viewed as a thorn. But I promise you one thing. I am a thorn that will not go away.
This was not just a contest between rules and humanity, but also a battle between indifference and passion. Just as the judge was about to deliver the verdict, Truman suddenly burst through the door with a group of people. It was the children with leukemia from the hospital and their parents. They had all put on those red rubber noses, symbols of the joy and hope Patch had once brought them. Countless gazes now held complex gratitude. Though 1,000 words could be spoken between them, a single look of trust was enough to declare Patch's victory. Finally, the medical board reached a unanimous opinion. They acknowledged that Patch's actions, while breaking existing medical systems and concepts to some degree, also provided new ideas for improving them. Despite some regulatory violations in the process, they could not obscure the contributions he had made to patients. Therefore, they decided to dismiss Walcott's complaint and upheld Patch's right to continue his studies at the school.
You carry with you a flame, which one could only hope would spread through the medical profession like a brush fire. And Dean Walcott, in the future, I think matters like this could best be solved if you yourself would practice a little excessive happiness.
The courtroom erupted as the verdict was announced. Everyone stood up, cheering and applauding for Patch. Time flew by to the day of the graduation ceremony. Students walked up one by one to receive their diplomas. When Patch's name was called, thunderous cheers immediately erupted from the audience. Everyone wanted to see what new stunt he would pull, but his attire was completely normal. Just as Walcott also thought Patch was finally going to behave, this happened. This story of miracles and hope is adapted from the true experiences of American Dr. Patch Adams. He proposed laughter therapy in the 1970s and over the next 12 years, personally built a home-based medical service center. Without health insurance or advanced equipment, he provided free treatment to over 15,000 impoverished patients. Later, he even purchased 105 acres of land in West Virginia, planning to build a larger hospital dedicated to providing free medical services and humane treatment to more people. And by the time the film was made, nearly 3,000 doctors had resigned to join Patch's cause. Yet sadly, Robin, the lead actor who brought joy to countless fans, ultimately could not escape illness's grasp and died by suicide at home in 2014 due to depression, aged 63. Truthfully, Patch Adams is not a perfect feel-good film. It might be overly idealistic, even melodramatic in parts. Even Dr. Patch Adams himself publicly criticized the film for being overly dramatized, but it's undeniable that it genuinely spurred public re-examination and attention towards doctor-patient relationships. The reason the film's Patch could rise from the lowest point in his life wasn't just due to his persistence with laughter therapy, but more because he understood how to find his self-worth in the needs of others. He made children laugh with a red rubber nose, decorated a dying old man's dream with balloons, and fulfilled a grandma's wish with a pool of noodles. These seemingly insignificant acts were like patches, mending the broken spirits of others while quietly stitching together the wounds in his own heart. Yet reality is far more complex than film. We may not have Patch's talent or passion, nor enough courage to challenge authority, and certainly not the ability to change the whole of society. But this absolutely does not mean we can easily give up. As Patch said, "Death is not the enemy. Indifference is." Remember, true strength is never about being invincible. It's about choosing kindness, despite knowing humanity's flaws, seeing life's cruelty, yet still daring to stake the rest of one's life on an absurd ideal. Because so-called hope is simply someone stubbornly scattering seeds that bloom into flowers into the cracks of despair.